Well, I've heard you tell the story. I've seen you tell it. I've seen real CEOs and executives receive it, lean in. They didn't call you a liar. And they went day to day, business as usual.
Yeah, it's almost, I have to be careful when I tell the story because it's almost too good to be true. It's almost one of these things like, everyone says they want to see it to believe it. You show it to them, but they're just like, I just can't even comprehend like this. I don't get it. How could a software transform your company like that?
So thanks for hosting us and giving us an opportunity to talk and kind of tell a little bit of the Sunpro story, and then what you're doing now, really. So why don't we kind of rewind and go back a little bit in time when Sunpro really got some legs behind it, and you as the CEO knew that you were going to grow, but there were some challenges that led up to that.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I started in solar. We founded the company in 2010, and we only worked at that time we were only in the state of Louisiana, which we worked exclusively in Louisiana until 2016, when we decided to start reaching out to other states. So we moved to Texas in 2016. And that was really like the transformational moment in our company, which led to us, really finding what I would just call just complete greenscape in Texas, where there really wasn't a lot of other solar companies, especially sophisticated solar companies, and just allowed us to really begin to grow about as fast as we could figure out how to hire people and deploy assets to other markets and other cities, really from Texas and then all through the Southeast, which we did from 2016 through 2021, when we sold part of the business private equity, and then ultimately ADT 14 months later. So that was so really, our business really transformed and started becoming like a really big, super regional company in 2016.
Really, the big boy pants kind of came on when you got into Texas, got out of the rebates were killed in Louisiana, which some would say, well, that's not really selling solar, but it was happening, and you transitioned into Texas and really had to start from scratch.
Yeah, well, at the time in Louisiana, we had not only did we enjoy the federal tax credit, but we had a 50% refundable tax credit. And so basically our customers were getting 80% of the cost covered. So we weren't really selling, we were just writing contracts. And so, one of the messages I had for our sales team when that ended in 2015, which really prompted us to move out of the state, was that, going forward, we're going to have to learn how to sell now. Like, we're going to have to sell the value proposition beyond just like it's 80% off. Like, we have to talk about the values of this product and how it's going to, offset your bill and all the other benefits that come along with it. And so it was really transformational for us as a company, our sales team specifically, having to go out and begin to change how we talk about this product.
When did you decide that, growing the company and getting into multiple states, and maybe what you needed to do to get the company to the next level? Like, when did that happen? Because the story I remember is you got into solar kind of by accident.
Right, that's true.
Yeah. And not to jump back, but that's actually a pretty cool story. And if I remember right, it was a contractor who wanted solar and then kind of bailed out, and you ended up completing the deal. Maybe you can help me color that up.
Well, the story is, I was really focusing on remodels. I was kind of your typical small time contractor, and I had a customer that really wanted to do solar, and he came to me and said, "Look, I can't really find anyone that's doing it right now. The guys that are doing it I don't really trust." He's like, "Why don't you let me be your first customer in solar?" And he's like, "I really think you should look into it. I think it's going to be big." And I was like, "I don't know anything about solar, but I was at the time things were slow. I was like, okay, I'll figure it out. I'll do it. And so we did. And that really is where we started in 2010. And then by 2012, it had really taken over our business, where we were exclusively only doing solar at that time.
Yeah. So a nice little accident that happened.
Yeah.
For
for sure.
Yeah. And when you got into Texas and you are thinking about growing the organization, one of the things that you decided to do was to enable sales to be able to sell better with training, software, sales call. Like, walk me through how that kind of materialized.
Yeah. Well, let me say this just to be fair to what happened, is that, I wish I could look back and say I was smart enough and sophisticated enough to know how technology and some things we did were going to transform our business. Some of these things I really didn't understand at the time. Later, as these things happened and things progressed, I began to realize like how truly transformational this was for our business. At the time, we had this unique problem in the South, really all of the Southeast United States, where we had very low electricity prices relative to other parts of the country, like, the West Coast, East Coast. And so the value proposition in terms of like offset or how much money you're going to save wasn't as attractive in all the Southeastern states. So, what really kind of started me down this path is I met with a lady. We gave her the proposal for solar, and she looked at the numbers and she said, "Oh, I'll just buy one less pair of shoes a month and just not buy solar. I'll save the same amount of money." And it really got me thinking, like, okay, for this to work, we need to enhance our value proposition. We need to make this a better deal. We need to change our offer. And so I started to develop ideas around like combining solar with energy efficiency, right? Like, let's go in and like, we're gonna reduce consumption, and we're gonna make electricity through solar and offer this combined benefit. And at the time, this was nobody was really doing it, and I couldn't find a product that would allow me to walk in the house and offer a multitude of different opportunities for a customer beyond solar. So at the time, this is way back in 2015. At the time, there was even very little sophistication in the software. And so the product that we were using at the time would only give you a very vanilla solar presentation and come up with a proposal for solar only. And then if I wanted to add energy efficiency or insulation, or we want to do a roof, or all these other ancillary products that we ultimately offered, it didn't allow you to come up with a very complete, robust proposal that covered all of these things. And that was really what kind of led me to start looking for, like, there's got to be another tool. Is there another product out there that would allow us to do this? And ultimately, I found a gentleman, Mike Latch, who was in the process of actually developing a product that could do these types of things. And I hired him to build a completely 100% customizable product specific to our company. And through that process, it completely transformed our company. And all kinds of just incredible benefits came out of it that at the time we didn't realize. I mean, things like as we grew, we were hiring salespeople at a tremendous pace. And you and anyone that's been in a fast-growing company can understand, like, a huge part of hitting your targets or your revenue goals, sales goals, is a big part of that is you have to bring in a certain amount of salespeople every month, every year. And you had to quickly provision them and train them to go out there and fail fast if they're going to fail, or be successful. And it's very complex. Solar's can be a very complex product to sell, especially when you start adding some of the other stuff that we were doing. And so the product, what we developed, what we found is it made it incredibly easy to bring in and train a salesperson. It allowed, what it really, one of the big benefits is it allowed the sales guys that are in the middle of in the pack, right? Like I always said, like your top 20% of your sales guys, you can give them a pencil and a legal pad, and they're going to walk in and close deals for you.
Yeah.
And what I realized that we were doing, and I think most sales organizations do, is they design a sales process and they think about sales process in the terms of like the top 20%, right? Your heavy hitters, the guys are going to walk in. And when the other guys, the other 80% come in, they don't understand. They're like, he's doing it, why aren't you doing it?
Yeah, you can't keep up.
And so what we realized is like through this product, we could take our middle 50%, and if we could move them forward and make them 20%, 30% better through software, through helping them strengthen their presentation of the result, that would have a much bigger impact on sales than helping your top 20% of your closers.
Yeah.
They're going to close anyway. And so, through the development of this software and through, many years of, perfecting this, what we found is that we could take a guy who's okay, pretty good at sales. We could bring him in. We could train him in a week, send him out. And with this product, it was so intuitive and so good that it could make a mediocre salesperson look really good.
Yeah.
And, the homeowner would leave that presentation feeling like, they'd covered all the bases, that this particular sales representative was knowledgeable, and really, by the end of the presentation, typically a homeowner would have no questions. We would have answered everything. It wrapped it up in a nice, neat bow, and really allowed us to just really, pour fuel on the fire and hire salespeople at an incredibly fast rate that we could know would go out and give a good presentation that was accurate, that would minimize cancellations and a lot of the other issues that happen when you have sales folks that aren't accurately depicting things, not because, just because they don't know or because it wasn't clear, because as you know, sometimes solar is hard to talk about or explain to people. And so it really, it just completely changed the whole landscape of our company through this product. But a large part of that was our ability to hire sales reps and help make them successful. Because not only is the product great for the company, a big problem in solar and a lot of sales organizations when you're doing kitchen table sales is like sales rep turnover, right? Like how many sales reps do you hire that 30, 69 days later are gone because they just can't make it? And that's a huge expense, it's a huge problem. And like one of the things we were able to do is we had much lower turnover than other solar companies because we could help make these people successful.
Faster.
Yeah. That's right.
And I think one of the things you said that really resonated with me is the reduce before you produce, because we just kind of, the sales team just like, we latched onto that. It was a differentiator. And not much has changed in the landscape of solar tools today. There's some enhancements, but it's still the same tech stack basically when you started. And so this software helped you move a little faster, implement your idea of reduce before you produce, control things. One of the things we haven't touched on, Mark, is lender control and first look, with a push of a button. Can you elaborate a little bit on that and lender mix and how you could push it to the field with very little effort?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we could, let's go back to something I think it's really important that you just remind me when we talk about lender mix and these other products, is that one of the things people often overlook in, I think, the sales presentation, like the sit, right? We're at the kitchen table, is, this sounds like a little wonky, I guess, but I often think of it, it's like the sales rep it's like this beautiful performance that's happening, right? And you can imagine if you went to the opera or you're at a play or whatever, it would be it would really detract from your experience if throughout this presentation or this performance, someone would have to stop and say, "Oh, everybody just stop for a minute. We're going to go over here and do this thing. We're going to come back." And I think one of the really, it's often overlooked, but one of the most valuable things that we discovered is that the ability to keep a customer completely in one presentation from very beginning to the very end has a tremendous benefit in terms of close rates and keeping a customer engaged. And so when we talk about like finance or other products, even things like referrals, all these things that we are tasking our sales reps to do, having the ability to do this in one presentation without ever having to leave it, all in front of the customer who's participating every step of it, significantly increases the customer's like satisfaction and their view on how well the presentation went, and ultimately significantly increase close ratios for our reps. And an interesting stat was like prior to leveraging software for sales, on average, our reps closed 1.6 deals per month. A year later, after we had completely adopted this and rolled out this new sales software, we doubled our average close ratio per rep. And that, so when you go from like 1.5-ish, 1.6 to 3,
Yeah.
I mean, for an organization, like if nothing else changes, right, you've basically cut your customer acquisition costs in half.
Yeah.
You've doubled your sales revenue per rep. We didn't necessarily hire more sales reps. We didn't, we were certainly growing and hiring more, but a huge piece of that was just the sheer fact that our reps began to produce more. And so, I'm sorry, I kind of diverged from what you were asking me.
That's actually really important, because I kind of, when you look at finance, that's kind of jumping to the end of the product set, right? You're looking to qualify the customer, but it wasn't that fluid, right? Meaning it wasn't that standard when we were out in the field. You could run credit whenever you wanted to, really.
Right.
The important piece to note is the software allowed the rep just to do one simple thing, and that was to click a button and not have to have navigation tools or call a manager and say, what do I do next? You just kind of follow the flow. Week of training, day 6, you're selling. And we made it so simple, as the product got better over time, that it was almost too simple. If somebody just saw the product without really being in front of a customer, they were like, I'm not used to this, especially people that had solar experience. So when it comes to like the lender mix side, it's exciting to talk about, because even today, you got to bounce out and go run credit on the lender portals. And it's complex for someone new getting into the business. So when you look at yourself and other EPCs that are looking to grow, they're looking for solar experience, and because they have to navigate those tools.
Right.
So it's a big thing to talk about from an EPC perspective, controlling the lender mix, but also from a rep perspective, not having to make that decision, right? You just kind of go through and the system will pretty much put the loan or the TPO product in the right finance company, and you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to make decisions. You don't have to have 500 different rates that you have to consider like you do today. And even today, it's still the same.
Right.
So I don't know all the guts behind it, but I think you put a lot of thought into what that was going to look like, and maybe you could just touch on it a little bit.
I'll tell you a funny story with that. Is the loan piece of the proposal, or the finance portal, whatever you want to call it, it was so integrated and so smooth. on board, like I'm ready to go. Where do I sign? Before they ever saw the price, because it was so smooth and so simple within the process. By the time we got to the end, they were already convinced. Most solar companies are selling like some type of bill swap, or at least that's a huge part of the value proposition. And it was so easy to do it that oftentimes customers would agree to go solar before they even knew what they were paying. Yeah. And that would be you would never see that if you were going to a portal outside. Also, another thing we found is that the more like decisions that a customer has to make during a presentation decreases the opportunity that you're going to ultimately get to like a close, a sale. Because every time there's a decision, it's a yes or no. And so one of the things we were able to do with finance, and there's a lot of different ways you could, I guess, skin the cat on this, but what we found is by offering, the way that we set up our finance within the proposal, which basically became a seamless part of the proposal, it just became another part of it, is we would basically approve you for finance before we even got to the end of the proposal. We were like in the middle of the proposal. Yeah. And with the ability now to do soft credit pulls, it was really simple, just a few pieces of information we need from the homeowner. And we would basically get their, of course, get their permission, do a soft credit pull, and they would be approved right there before we even really got into the meat of the proposal. And by the time we got to the end, we didn't have to have the tough conversations like, are you ready to pull credit? Like, let's go to this third party bank and we're going to open up their portal and you're going to put in all this information. It was already done. It was really simple. It was like, hey, we're good. Do you want to go solar? Just all we got to do is press this button and we're done. And so it really made it simple. Our CFO loved it because it allowed him a tremendous amount of control with all of our different finance partners, where he could, literally within minutes, he could change the deal that the customer saw, right? So literally, I remember one time, one bank, this is way back in the really low finance days. I think we were selling like a 2.99 was kind of what we led with. And somebody came back and said, hey, we'll do it for like, your dealer fee, we'll lower your dealer fee 10%, for the same deal. He literally went on his computer within like 2 minutes. Every rep in the company was now selling that. And so it gave us a tremendous amount of control. We were able to pivot really quickly. It allowed us to leverage our finance volume to make deals with finance partners. So where we could guarantee how much loan volume we might give them in a year. In return, they would give us rebates and stuff like that. So it gave us a lot of control and really simplified the process for both the customer, and our team.
When I first came in, I was like, thought I knew solar and we have to change some things, and ultimately, got humbled and realized that there's a better way to sell solar. And one of those things that I realized when you look at that, what's best for the rep isn't always the best for the customer or the company. And being able to control that financial mix without the rep having to make those decisions made the rep actually be more comfortable in the home. And I witnessed it firsthand. And behind the scenes, what is the best deal for the company and the customer? That's decided by people that are closer to the product on the back end than just a rep trying to sell the path of least resistance, which isn't the best for the customer or the company sometimes.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's something that I noticed when I went on a call and I witnessed a rep deliver it. I immediately judged the rep and I said, this is going to be terrible. It was in Savannah, Georgia. It was like my first month with Sunpro, and it ended up being one of the better calls that I've seen in a long time. She wasn't a great rep, but followed the process. And I was blown away. I instantly became a believer that there's an easier way to give a customer the experience they deserve than just design a system, talk about price, and then a proposal is generated, and then you walk the customer through the proposal. And that's the way companies are doing it today. It's
That's
the
right.
same. So when you look at, the growth model, like here we have this software now, and it's like, okay, we're going to put the foot on the gas. Like, what were your considerations for markets, and how you were going to, you realize that you could train faster, get them in the markets faster, maybe get them appointments faster. But what was it that said, we're going? Like, because I remember opening, 4 markets at one time in 4 different states.
Right.
And I would have said I couldn't have done that, 3 or 4 years before, even a year before that. Like, what gave you the confidence that Sunpro could do that, and you could do that?
Right. Well, I think over time, we were able to prove to, our reps and our company that we were able to go into new markets. And an interesting point is that, this was, again, we were predominantly in the Southeast for a long time. So, you think of states like Texas, but like also like Arkansas, Missouri, Georgia, Kentucky. These weren't solar hotbeds, right? And so,
Iowa, Nebraska.
Right. And so you go to these markets and you're hiring sales reps that not only have never sold solar, they don't even know what solar is. Yeah. They don't know anyone that has solar. Oftentimes in these cities, we're like kind of first in, and we were able to, we figured out and we're able to go into these markets, and we could take these guys that, hey, you sold cars before, or you sold this or that, and we could, in 1 week, we could get them to a point with the help of the software where they could walk in someone's home and give a really good, accurate solar presentation. And so once we figured that out, it was truly just how fast can we deploy our resources and assets to get to these new markets and build them.
Yeah, and Oklahoma was another one with 70% credit fell because of where we launched between Tulsa and OKC, but we figured it out. And there was no one that we hired that had solar experience in those markets. Same with Iowa and Nebraska.
Right.
And those were, Iowa and Nebraska specifically, were some of the fastest growing markets that we launched.
That's right. Another good point is that oftentimes when you go to a new market, you could do a tremendous amount of research prior to going, right? Your finance people can look at it. Your ops people are checking permitting requirements and AHJ requirements and utilities. But oftentimes we launch in these markets, we'd be like, have the oh shit moment, like, oh man, like we didn't see this one. And one of the beauties of having the software that we had is we could instantly make modifications. We could make modifications by market. We could do it really quickly. And so, one of the things I see today, or continue to see, is that a lot of the software that, a lot of the big names today that most companies are using, they have to build a product that can work in all 50 states, that is kind of, I would say, like for the masses. And it can be very frustrating. And I've heard it from other owners recently, or people that are in business out there selling, is like, there's these little nuances, like, man, if I could just get it to do this or show this, or, change it to do this, it would really help our company, or really make, make it easier for the customer to understand something, or to show this to the consumer. And it's very hard to get done with some of these companies because they're not set up to do this. And so one of the powers of having the software that we had, or that Patter is going to offer to people, is the ability to make changes easily, which is just super important when other things like we were, I don't think I would never say we had the perfect sales presentation, because we were constantly working on it and changing it, and people would come forward and say, hey, in this market we started doing this and it's working really, really well. And we could, almost overnight, we could look at it and say, hey, this is really working, we should launch this everywhere. And literally like in days, we could have that into the software. And so it really allows us to be very nimble, adaptable to both, very specific markets or company-wide. We could make changes. And it really allows, as the market evolves, as your sales methodology, your team changes, it's really easy to make changes on the fly. So here's one of the most frustrating things that I've encountered recently when I talk to people in solar, CEOs in solar, is that I tell them the story of what happened after we leveraged the software, which is the following. When we launched the year we launched our own sales software in 2017, we had $40 million in revenue. 1 year later, we had $80 million. The year after that, $236 million. The year after that, $410 million. We almost doubled our sales every year after we launched this product. Not only did we achieve these sales and revenue goals, we increased the close rate per rep by more than double. We lowered our cancellation rate by 50%. We increased our referrals by 100%. And all of this you can attribute to the software and what it allowed our company to do with respect to like how we sold, how we trained, how we closed, how we financed, how we asked for referrals. And, I tell people the story and they appreciate it, but they just don't seem to get it. And I don't know how much more evidence you need to present to someone than those statistics for them to just say, I get it. Like, I should look into this as well. Like, I mean, it truly was the catalyst that transformed our company into, ultimately, which was a $1 billion a year solar company.
Well, I've heard you tell the story. I've seen you tell it. I've seen real CEOs and executives receive it, lean in. They didn't call you a liar. And they went day to day, business as usual.
Yeah, it's almost, I have to be careful when I tell the story because it's almost too good to be true. It's almost one of these things like, everyone says they want to see it to believe it. You show it to them, but they're just like, I just can't even comprehend like this. I don't get it. How could a software transform your company like that?
I think the product was made so well behind the scenes. And even today, as we're talking about, Patter as an example, and you show it, it's made so simple to follow and see that it really doesn't do it justice on what's happening in the control room, right? Behind the scenes.
Right.
And so I believe that when you tell the story, I believe they believe you, and I believe that they're bought into it, but it's scary. They don't know how to jump in. And especially in today's environment. And you made the decision to jump in. We talked about that a little while ago, but maybe we kind of re-emphasize that. Like what made you put the investment? I mean, you had all the tools that everybody was using. You were using those tools. What made you say, I'm going to put money on this and I'm going to grow, my business like nobody's business? Like, what made you decide to do that? Like, because there was nobody telling you how to do it. There was no one else running that play. You did it on your own.
Right. Well, funny stories remind me, when I started down this path, my entire team was against me. I remember literally one meeting, we were in this meeting, and Mike Latch, who was designing our software, we had a conversation about him, and someone stood at the meeting and they were like, you're throwing money down a black hole. Like, what does this guy have on you that's making you just continue to spend money on this product? Because for when I did it, it took like a year to build a product. I mean, it wasn't like something ready out of the box. I mean, we literally had to build this thing from scratch. And it was a long process and we spent a lot of money. But I knew that, if we were going to go to the next level, if we wanted to be one of the big dogs, and really have a platform and a company that could be nationwide, we had to have something like this that gave us, all of these requirements around control, around training, around the ability to increase close ratios, bring in new salespeople. It just, you can't go big without that. And there, even today, I would say of all the softwares I've seen, there's no out of the box solution other than Pattern that can allow a company to be nimble enough to really grow and to go into a lot of markets and do it quickly.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Is you decided to partner. You have a lot of people making a bunch of noise in the background. When is it going to be done? And it became kind of an office. I got to talk to some of those people, and it became kind of the office joke. And when the product launched, before my time, I got to see it after the fact. People started to change their tune a little bit because there was more sales coming in, more markets. We didn't have a 6-week training program any longer. It was condensed in these short market launches that 5 days, and you go back a month later and there's 60, 70 sales in that market, and you give another 5-day dose of training. The team, your CFO, became believers pretty quickly when that started to happen. And the question I have is, so software made it so easy to go into a market, launch finance products, onboard reps. What else needed to convince the team other than results? Like, what kind of work did you do in the background to say, hey, just trust me on this. We're going to get to this point, because it started, it's being built, it's launched, and then you started to see results. When did the team apologize?
Well, I'll tell you a story. I feel like the problems that I encountered with my team in terms of supporting my vision of the software is very likely the same problems that a founder or a CEO today is going to face, right? Because, most salespeople, the kind of stuff we're talking about, like a real salesperson is going to understand when we talk about like close ratios, right? Those people who have sat at the kitchen table and asked someone to write them a check for $40,000. Like, if you haven't done that, you could never appreciate how complex and intense that transaction can be, right? And so, when you try to explain to your CFO or your HR director or your head of operations, like what happens in that transaction, they're never really going to appreciate it, right? They're just like, I remember one time one of our head ops people, and it was I remember because it was so insightful of like how the team thinks about sales. And he said something like, I could be a salesperson. I mean, all they do is just go in and repeat the same thing over and over. I mean, why could anybody could do that? And like, no, dude, you don't understand. Like, this is magic that happens. And, so for most CEOs, I imagine, if you're presenting to CFO, like, he's never going to understand some of the stuff that we're talking about, and, I feel like, but the ability, I think the aha moment for our CFO was when he saw like average sales per rep double, and he didn't have to spend any more money.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden say, oh wow, our customer acquisition cost has just dropped by 50% because we're closing so many more deals for the money that we're spending. I think that, the message for a CFO is that, this is truly going to significantly reduce our costs, and we're going to be able to extract a lot more with what we already have.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it that way, because some of the CEOs that you've talked to and you've kind of given some of the secret sauce to have a team just like you had, and they care. They care about the investments you're going to make and the risk that you're taking. And Mark, I think it's worth kind of hitting, another couple points on the fact that you saw and one of the things you saw was this energy efficiency, reduce before you produce. That was a big thing, and there was no real way outside of verbally for a rep to deliver that. And that was a kind of an important piece of the kickoff to start this relationship with Mike and to build the software. What else contributed to the fact that I got to give the sales rep a better way? I got to make it easier for the rep, give a customer a great experience, filter in clean deals on the back end. Like, what other considerations did you make? Because, you know, you had to make a tough decision, and not such a great environment, because you were, you know, transitioning from Louisiana into Texas, looking to grow and launching some new software. There was a whole bunch of risk associated with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What was the question again?
The question is, what else were you considering? I mean, you're going to dump a bunch of money into a man and a product that was going to be, you know, constructed with some of your vision to just make it easier for a rep to go to market and make it easier for you to grow your business. And maybe there's not an answer. Maybe it's just like, I got to do something different.
Well, there's two things I would comment there. One, if I was selling solar today, why would I want to go in the house with the exact same proposal that every other guy who came before me who's going to come after me is going to come in the house with? Because I don't know if people think about it like this, but I've talked to enough homeowners through the years to know that if they get 3 solar proposals, I guarantee you that customer will not be able to tell you what solar panel they looked at, what inverter technology they looked at, or almost anything about the value proposition that company had, right? Because every rep's going to say the same thing when they walk in the house. We have the best warranty. We have the best panel. We have the best inverter. We have the best company. And by the time they go through this process with multiple companies, they don't even remember what they heard.
Yeah.
And so by creating a very unique presentation, is one of the things I love about Pattern, is that every company can create this really personalized, unique, specific product or proposal for their company that people are going to remember. And it's those little things when you're sitting at the kitchen table that the customer ultimately walks away with, or ultimately these are the reasons they choose companies. It's never going to be, very rarely it's going to be because, like, I really like the tech in the solar panel he showed me, or the inverter efficiency. You know, could you imagine a husband after a sales presentation telling his wife, like, the inverter efficiency and this particular one is so much better. Like, that doesn't happen. They're looking to, they never, I think most homeowners don't ever really understand what the hell they bought or how it works. But they're looking for a company they can trust. And how do they determine that? Like, is the salesperson well informed? Does the company appear to have their act together? It's almost like a sales presentation is almost like an interview, right? And so if everybody that walks in the room has the exact same proposal, right? The exact same resume, like, how would a customer choose, like, who to use? Or they're just going to strictly say, well, everybody's the same. I'm just going to go with who's ever the cheapest, which is typically, my experience, probably not the best guy, right? So, like, having the ability to craft, to create this really personalized presentation that really allows a customer to understand your value proposition, and it makes you much less forgettable than the guy that walked in with the basic proposal tool that every other person who knocked on the door is going to have.
So what I heard you say, actually, with my convoluted question, was I just want the customer and the rep, actually, to have a better experience, a more unique experience, and represent your company, which today, everyone's the same. You can't tell them apart.
No. I mean, you look at all the major software, solar sales software systems out there. I mean, they're effectively the exact same thing. And they're not very customizable. And they don't really, it's not really even a presentation tool. It's a design tool, but it's not really designed to give a a presentation?
It's funny actually, because what you just said there is most EPCs, most organizations would not even have the tool unless they had to have the tool.
Right.
So what would they really use to give the customer and the rep a great experience and represent the company? Like they're on their own. Here's a binder maybe, but that tool has to exist to get to a price quote, a tool, because you're designing a system and it has to have components and it has to have production, and you enter TPO. So they have the tools because they have to. And what I heard you say, Mark, was, yeah, you had to have the tools, but there was a better way.
Right.
And that's why you decided to create the better way.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, that propelled, and I've heard you say this, it attributed to that massive growth. And I think that story's hard to tell.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I'll tell you, something else comes to mind. Another question I often get asked by solar CEOs is, they're like, how did you build a W-2 sales force? You know, everybody recognizes the value in that, right? Like everybody knows, like, wow, you know, you have control, you have predictability. It typically, you know, these W-2 reps, you know, an employee is going to be better trained. They're going to be more interested in like good outcomes for your company, right? It's not a mercenary. And I often get asked, like, how did you do this, right? Because everybody wants to do it. And, you know, they're like, how did you hire these reps that, you know, made less per sale than like a 1099 door knocker, you know, a guy out there making whatever, $8,000 a sale. How is that possible? How could you bring them in for less? Because what we offered, and a lot of this was in the software, was they closed a significantly higher the people they met with. Like, we made their job easier. Like, they could wake up in the morning. You know, we there was other things we were good at, setting appointments and stuff like that. But, you know, when a rep knows, like, hey, I have a 46% chance when I walk in the door of this house today, I'm going to close them. It's a lot easier to keep people around.
Yeah.
And it's it really allowed us to recruit and retain. And I think that's overlooked oftentimes by these reps. And I'll tell you something else. If I was the CEO of Sunpro Solar today, and I was looking at what's before us with the current changes to, you know, solar incentives, you know, I would be looking really hard and thinking, you know, what can I do to change my business to still allow me to offer a consumer a very compelling offer, right? And the way I see this is, I think going forward, like, people are still going to want to buy solar. It's going to be different. But I think that it's very similar to what we experienced in 2015 when the state of Louisiana pulled the rug out from under us.
Yep.
We had to rethink how we're going to go out and sell solar. But it's doable, and there will be people that are going to be wildly successful in the years to come after this, but they're going to do it a different way. And part of that is going to be, you're going to, you know, this may be different by market, right? It's not one size fits all for the whole United States. But, you know, things like the ability to offer it, like solar is going to be one of the arrows in your quiver, right? And you're going to walk in the house and you're going to be looking to do, like, to me, like a holistic opportunity to reduce your electric bills. How are we going to do that? Like solar, energy efficiency, it could be HVAC, water heaters, you know, roofing. There's all kinds of different technologies out there that you may want to combine to make the numbers work for consumer, to put together a compelling offer. And, you know, I would be looking for a product that would allow me rather quickly, because you're probably like, you know, the first thing you think of may not be the best answer, right? This may take some trial and error over the next couple of years to kind of figure out what really sticks. Is to find a product that allows you, that's not solar agnostic, right? That's like, hey, it's solar or nothing, or solar or that's it, right? So find find a solution like a software that would allow you to sell and add any number of products, right? That you could add to the mix. It wouldn't change it. It's very nimble. It's easy to add into your presentation and show the benefits. It can all come together at the end in one clean proposal. And that's my problem with the current products out there. Like, it doesn't really offer that. That's the same thing I was facing in 2015 in Louisiana. It's like, I need a product that I can go change my business on the fly, right? Change my offer, change things that I do that could allow ultimately I can take someone through a proposal and have one clean, I'll call it a proposal at the end of this thing that I can leave with a customer that shows, hey, we're going to do A, B, C, and D. Here's the value you're going to receive. Here's the benefit. And, if I was the CEO today of a solar company, I would be thinking really hard about, what can I do in my business to get ready for the changes that, that CEO and their company are going to have to face in the years to come.
Yeah, I like the way you said that, because when you look at the different product sets that any EPC or any organization would offer, what is the go-to-market? How do you represent it? How do you represent the product or what that product can do without just saying it? Because if you look at windows, HVAC, window treatments, anything home improvement, that rep really has to fight hard and tell a story, and it's in the hands of the rep. Some organizations give them a little bit more, but think about like how that product is represented. And what you're saying is, and we did it, right? With roofing and energy efficiency, we did it, and it was connected with a story for the customer that was believable. It was the truth. Reduce before you produce, and if you need a new roof before you go solar, we can help. Those types of things was represented within the product with integrity, not just some rep upselling or charging more for something or adding a suite of products that the customer didn't need. So that experience, it comes back to the software. It was controlled. You couldn't one-off the experience. The thing I want to highlight too, Mark, because being in leadership on the other side of it, we could see some things that you can't see with other software. We can see where they were. Did they run credit? We could see it in real time, which would get our managers to engage in real time. That gave the leaders and the field line managers the ability to be more proactive in sales and not reactive by having software where they could see and have a lens into what was happening and participate in those sales calls. It's not that the software made everything perfect. It just made it a whole lot better.
Right.
So, any other thoughts on kind of that leap of faith into we talked a lot about like the reason that you chose Mike Latch and the product and that leap of faith. Any other thoughts that when you looked back, even some anxiety that might have been there as it was being built and launched? Any other thing that you want to share?
Well, I mean, change is always scary. And, the reason I was in the seat I was in is because I was often willing to do the uncomfortable and make decisions even when the rest of my team didn't necessarily agree, right? And, that was one of those times. And, change for an organization is always scary. And, there's going to be a lot of people around you because you pay them to be that is going to be, they're going to question it. They're going to be unsure of it. And, but it was definitely for our company, the best decision we ever made. Yeah. I mean, truly, we would not have achieved what we were able to achieve had we not had that software, had we not, created this very nimble sales software that would allow us to hire like we did and grow like we did.
Yeah, I look back and think about all the people that you hired and we hired and the existing people that really fought in the trenches that saw all these people coming in and this company growing. And man, it would have took one bad apple to bring in and really stand on the table and say, this is the way it needs to be done. You guys are wrong. And it never happened. I was probably the closest to it and realized that I just probably need to be quiet and there's a better way. And that's why the story is so powerful, because thousands of people came into the organization, and we didn't have too many people think that there was a better way. And that was awesome to see.
Yeah, well, the truth is, you and a lot of senior people like you came in the organization because they saw the numbers, saw what we were doing. Like, okay, something must be working. I want to be part of that. They join the team, and the first thing they do is like, oh, let me show you guys how to sell. I'm gonna show you some of the stuff I've learned. And typically after, and I think you experience this, after folks who do a couple ride-alongs, they'd be like, whoa, I can't believe it. Like, it's incredible, how well this thing works and how good, you can make a mediocre salesperson shine.
Yeah, I saw it firsthand, and know that I wasn't going to be the one to mess that up. So looking at results and using some strengths on leadership to help support results and growth, because growth can, break a company that's not well, put together. But that wasn't a problem. I think you did a great job lining up the org to kind of roll that product out, get the team to accept it, and grow. Incrementally is the wrong word. I mean, we grew.
Yeah,
hair on fire. See, we don't have any hair.
That's right. Yeah, we both had a full set of hair down on the shoulders for this. So one of the things you asked me was about how you were referencing how nimble the product was and how it allowed us to grow so fast, and it reminded me of I would actually describe one of my biggest feelings during that time was like a lot of frustration around the product, actually, because the thing worked amazing. It was incredible. But there were so many things that we knew if we had this in the software, or if we get it to do this or that, it would make it even better. And so oftentimes, like if you've ever built tech, right, you typically have limited resources in terms of like budget and people, right? You can only program so fast. And so, it was typically like we had a list of like things that we wanted to do. And you just kind of had to wait until the team could get to those. And oftentimes, like, your team or accounting or ops, somebody would have this great idea. We're like, this would be transformational if we could get this in software. And then we had to wait.
Yeah.
And so I often felt frustration with the product because it was so good. And, one of my things I love about Patter is that Patter, as great as our software was, Patter is like 100x of what we had, because Patter has taken all the good stuff about ours and all the stuff we wish we could have done and built this into a new platform that is, 10x, 100x of what we had, which was incredible and transformational. And so, I wish, what could we have done had we had Patter in 2017 in our company?
Yeah. Yeah, I think about that quite a bit as we, ran through the product and kind of had this wish list of how we wanted things based on what we knew at Sunpro. And the way those things are getting baked out and the way we have them today, even some of the stuff that I've showed former Sunpro folks are like, wow, like you guys really have something. One of it's just a simple pricing mechanism for TPO product, which is unbelievable. No one could calculate a price like that, like we can today. And that's because it's a bunch of industry guys that sees what's happening. We've talked about the big, beautiful bill and how that's impacting, from October to the end of the year. What's the mix? And you mentioned, hey man, if I was a CEO of a solar company right now, I'd be looking at product set. And how are you going to capitalize, or how are you going to maintain just status quo revenue? You can't. TPO is not going to make up for the purchase. It's just not. It doesn't work that way. So you have to have something else. You have to be dynamic. And what tool are you going to use to be dynamic? You're going to have a sales meeting. You're going to have a bunch of trainings, and so-and-so is not, Linda the candlestick maker is what we talk about all the time. Well, she's not saying these things. Well, why not? Well, because you got to be there in the call and listen. And if you're not there on the call, you're with another rep. And we've solved all that in Pattern. We've taken every element out of what a human responsibility doesn't have to do anymore, and still maintain the integrity of the organization with product and everything else. I'm going to rewind a second because I want to talk about the T-chart. We talked about change and anxiety, and we had to put it on a wait list or a production list to be able to get the software to catch up. One of the things we did, a certain couple markets was using something called a T-chart, very simple. And I saw that thing work on a piece of paper. One of our product guys heard it, and we had that thing in the software in about a month. Mm-hmm. That was a game changer because the two markets that was using it was the top two markets at that given time. And when we launched it, we saw markets just rocket ship growth because of that soft close, just a simple technique. And that's a great example of what Pattern can do today to be able to get your sauce in the platform. And even though that doesn't sum up what the software was doing, we took something from the field and we put it in the application. And I don't know of any platform in the solar space that could do that today.
Right.
And we did it 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah, well, I remember other stories around, when was the best time to ask for a referral? And that changed a couple times over the years as we perfected this and got more information. And every time we were able to go into the software and change it really quickly on when to ask for the referral and then how to ask for the referral. We could make that change in the software. Things around finance, when and how we handle that, we could change instantly. And the thing is, you referenced Sally Candlemaker, right? You got Sally Candlemaker. She's 3 weeks in, just out of training. She's out in the field, and you call her up and say, "Hey, Sally, I want you to change where you ask for the referral to this point in your presentation. I want you to say it this way." Like, she's not not getting that.
Nope.
She's hanging on for dear life. But because of how this software works and the presentation, she doesn't really have to know that. Just say, "Hey, by the way, Sally, we changed this. You'll see it coming up." And she looks like a pro, and it's smooth, and everybody gets it, and it's easy, and she looks like a pro. And, that is the kind of things that, what we had and what Pattern is, which is, really like Pattern's like what we had on steroids. I mean, it's incredible how nimble and how easily this thing can change and adapt. So it just, it's crazy that I just don't, I'm often surprised that more CEOs and sales leaders don't seem to understand or see the benefits of some of these things we're talking about with respect to like how easy it is to change, how easy it is to ensure that your reps are saying what you want them to say, right? I mean, most sales leaders know exactly what a sales presentation should look like, right? Go to any sales org, you go to their top guys, "Hey, give me your pitch," right? They're gonna nail it, right? But you go to like the guy who's 2 weeks out of training, who's out there by himself, ask him to give you the pitch. How long is it gonna take that guy to get to where your sales leaders are? Like probably never in most cases, right? But you get that guy to give to do 80% of what these good guys, it's good enough, right? If you can get them 80%, they're going to close a lot of deals for you.
Yeah, it's interesting that these tech companies that provide the software that allow a system to be built and finance to be implemented have decided with very little input on what the sales presentation should look like. And it doesn't match anyone's sales call.
These are like, you literally have engineers, software engineers, deciding what a solar presentation or a sales presentation should look like. I mean, it's kind of comical when you think about it like that.
It is. And I'm laughing because I was in that trap. I'm like, "Hey, you need, like, what the hell is this? Like, how am I going to, like, lead a team that is using this software I've never heard of?" And that's for another day. But something you said to me resonated, and when I was in the halls of Mandeville, and I get you for a couple minutes, and we talk about reps and training, and you said, could you put your right hand to God and say that you did everything to help that rep? And I never forgot that, because that's leadership and that's training and mentor and coaching. And what I had to do to really fulfill if somebody wasn't performing is validate if they were following the process. Because if they followed the process within the software and we gave them appointments and they ran referrals and they had this mix, they would sell. It was those folks that just weren't running the process because they thought either they were above it or they were just too lazy to really just push a button and walk through a great sales call with a customer that Sunpro wanted represented. And so that's why our attrition rate wasn't really anything we talked about, because we didn't lose sales reps. It would be a conversation. Hey, are you following the process? Do you feel like you're, because the question from Uncle Norm was, are people going to the reps or to the appointments? Are the reps going? And we say, yeah, they're taking pictures and we're doing all this stuff in the field to make sure. He goes, no, they're not going. They're not. It was constant pressure to make sure that those assets were being protected because they're expensive. But it was actually easy to single out the folks that just weren't following the process, because there weren't that many of them. Because we took the middle group and we elevated them. The one percenters do what the one percenters do. You accept them. They're high achievers. They're high earners. But I think, and you said this earlier, if I could take that middle group and get them a sell or two more, a month, a week, it doesn't matter. If I could just bump them up, the entire org increases and lowers my cost of acquisition by 50%. And that's what happened. It wasn't making the one percenters better. It was making the core that made up the sales team, and that allowed us to dump more people that weren't the one percenters in that environment and scale into new territories and grow faster than we've ever seen because of that, right? And that is a simple way of training and a process and the software. You can control it here. The rep has a great experience and the customer has a great experience. And today, I could tell you, it doesn't exist. The experience doesn't exist. It's all the same with a different individual saying different things with the same software.
Yeah, totally. Do you think it's possible, I think about this sometimes, that people in solar haven't really had to learn how to sell like maybe other industries, other products that are out there? Because we've had these credits and these incentives that, they really haven't had to go into the home and deliver like a true sales presentation and convey to this consumer like what their value proposition is and how it's going to make their life better. Because I think because of this tax credit, because of the current software that's out there, and unfortunately you kind of have to use these softwares because you have to have these really accurate drawings, right? You've got to be able to understand like what can fit on this roof, how is it going to look, right? So you're kind of, it forces companies to use these existing softwares that aren't designed for salespeople, really. They're designed by engineers, really for engineers, and allow you to, go in the house and get a sale. But, I wonder if sometimes like our industry has really just forgotten or doesn't really understand like the art of sales, like, and that, because we've always had these crutches with the incentives and all that, it's really easy to be able to walk in the house and say, like, hey, look, it's cheaper, right? Like you're gonna save money, like sign right here,
Yeah.
That's kind of what was going on in Louisiana back in the day. And, I think going forward that the companies that really know how to sell, right? They understand that process and what it takes to go into a consumer's home, sit at their kitchen table and really, explain to them a real value proposition beyond just like, oh, it's cheaper, right? It's cheaper right now to sign right here. It's easy. Those are the companies that are going to be successful, because there will be successful companies. I mean, people are going to still keep buying solar.
Yeah.
It'll be different, and the market's going to change. But one of the things everybody who's going to, if you're going to be a winner, is you better learn how to sell.
Yeah. And what's wrong with making that process easier, right? With software and technology, because I agree, there's companies out there that's doing it, they're doing it right, but they're micro, right? That's a tough environment for a salesperson to be in. It's a micro relationship from the company to the rep, and that is perceived by the customer. Something that Sunpro and we did was it was a low pressure environment for the sales rep. We saved those conversations for results when, later in the field, focus on the customer, focus on the process. And that's why the software allowed for that rep not to be thinking about what they have to do next. Oh, I got to go over here. It's just press the button. It'll solve a bunch of things, and it gives the customer a great experience. So when you say, these EPCs are going to continue to sell. They don't we just help make it easier, faster, better. Inclusion is something that we haven't really talked about, and the participation and way that rolls, because the fact is that Sunpro grew. When I left, it was 5,200 sales in 1 month. You have the 1%ers that still didn't really holistically use the tool. And that was okay. What do? You want to go, wrap those guys. Like, I really need, no, like, you do you could, as long as they're good, clean deals. But that middle group, at one point, it was a couple thousand salespeople used the tool and were producing deals. And if you took that tool away and gave them the tools of today, would they sell? They would leave the company. It's too hard. We've just made it easy. And one of the things I like to say, as we transition to talk about Patter, is we've truly taken the tech out of sales, meaning focus on the customer, be present. Don't be focused on this other thing, this noise over here, because you're trying to build 5 systems for 5 different price components. Just click a button and change it. It's simple.
One important point I should point out, because we've been talking about the middle of the pack, right? And the top 10, 20% of your closers don't need high-tech software to be successful. But you just reminded me, another thing that came out of this is that, I just want to point out that our software did make our best reps successful. And that, our really good reps, we used to joke, almost worked like part-time, because it became so easy for them, and they were so efficient that, our best reps would stop. They were like, I don't want any more company appointments. I've sold so many jobs, now I just get referrals. They wouldn't have to put in a tremendous amount of time. They could work, what I would consider a part-time schedule, right? They're not out beating doors every day, having to work the phones constantly. They would show up and close a very high rate of people they met with, who were very satisfied. And so, in a way, it did help our top reps. They loved it. Yeah. They loved the software. They loved the process. And it made their lives easier too.
Yeah, I agree. There's the point I wanted to make was we solve a lot of problems. But at the end of the day, if you don't have to pull out a calculator, and you don't have to figure out a red line calculation, and you don't have to remember what proposal was saved for what product, life becomes pretty easy. And I think a lot of those top producers, once they saw that, and they didn't have to do this minutia of actions, became believers. Because today, some of the same folks that were producing really well for Sunpro are saying, man, I just wish I could go back to that. And there's a way to go back to it. We've created it. Marc, if you had to say one or two things to a CEO today that's looking to grow, and even with the noise, right? It's not abnormal to have the noise. It's solar. It happens every couple of years. There's a reset or something's. There's a threat of the IT. There's noise. If you had to say to a CEO maybe back 2014 or 2015 when you decided to take the company to the next level? Like, what would you say? I mean, what would you tell them to do? What would you tell them to pay attention to first? And I'll kind of prime it is they're worrying about procurement, right? They're worrying about supply chain to some degree. They're worrying about the finance product. It's made it easy for them to say, I don't want W-2 employees, I want the dealers. But that makes their business unpredictable, and they're not able to scale and grow, even though I see these young CEOs wanting to do that. They just don't know how. Like, what's some advice that you could give them in a couple minutes to make them feel more comfortable?
Well, I'd say one thing, if you really think about, like, what is the lifeblood of a company, right? What is the one thing, if you disconnected it today, the company would die? Like, the quickest, what would that be? It would be sales, right? Like, sales absolutely drive everything within a company, right? And, like, you've heard the old saying, like, everyone in the company can't be in sales, but everyone in the company needs to be in sales,
right,
and understand what it is that you're doing. And so, a young CEO, an old CEO, should spend a significant amount of their time thinking about sales. And the funny thing is, I think as companies grow and your company matures and you get some more layers of management, different people, like, it's easy for a CEO to kind of like lose focus on sales. I never did that. I mean, I think I was often accusing our company of being too pro sales, but because I understood, right? Like, that is the thing that is going to grow our company, right? Like, we cannot be great in accounting. We could do better in finance. There's, issues in ops, right? Or procurement or whatever. But you can hire people to do that. And, you have time there to fix stuff. But to me, sales is the single biggest driver of any company's success. Like, you've got to be able to sell. And so, I believe a lot of CEOs don't spend enough time really thinking about that, right? They get to a certain level and all of a sudden they're, like you said, they're thinking about procurement, or, they're spending a lot of time with their CFO looking at financials, or thinking about cost centers, HR, so all that. But, like, so number one, that would be my first big piece of advice for CEO is, like, do not forget what's driving your entire company, which is sales. Another thing that I think is often overlooked by companies is that if you want to grow, right, the thing that got you where you are today is not going to be the thing that's going to get you to the next level, right? And so, how that would translate to this conversation is that, when our company was small, at one time, I was the only salesperson in our company, right? And I could put together these very manual proposals. Later, we hired a few salespeople. We had 10 salespeople, and we literally made our own proposals. We could do stuff. But you reach a point, if you want to scale, that you have to have a product and a way to grow quickly, right? And to bring in a lot of salespeople and still maintain, like, things like, you got to have controls in place. You got to ensure that the integrity of the sales process is still happening, that they're delivering, the types of sales that you want. They're saying the right things in the house they need to be saying. And so, like, to really grow, you have to have a product. You have to find things that are going to allow you and your company to move really quickly and to still establish that. Because another thing that I found that I was really surprised when our company got to a certain size is that I always assumed that as our company grew, that we would become more efficient, right? We could hire smarter people. We could have more organized ways that we do procurement. And it actually is kind of the opposite. The more you grow, like, the less efficient you become. The harder it is to manage. The harder it is to maintain the things that made your company what it was, right? Those special things. And so we're specifically, we could talk a long time about that, but just staying focused on sales. Yeah. How do you ensure that your presentation that is perfect, is dialed in, it delivers sales, it's proven, that it's given in a way that a consumer understands what they're buying, right? It's not just about getting a sale. You want to maintain the sale, right? You don't want a cancellation. You don't want to get sued later. You don't want clawbacks. You want a happy customer, right? So like, how do you ensure like not only are they delivering a good presentation, but it's accurate, it's reliable, it's clean, and if you're just like giving them a brochure and sending them out there, how can you lose complete control of it? And you see that a lot with these larger companies that have massive issues with cancellations, clawbacks. I mean, we've seen some bankruptcies around here. And I think a lot of that is due to like, they lost control, right? Like everybody wants to grow and they grew, but they did so at an enormous expense. And again, staying focused on sales, I think as your organization grows, not having an ability to control that process, you're going to lose it. Yeah.
And I think you decided, well, I know you decided fully integrated W2, and what some of these owners, founders and CEOs think, well, by contracting with these dealer groups, it's less risk. Well, it's actually more risk because you're not controlling what they're saying. You're just giving them tools to process a proposal. And we actually have a way to help that. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But Marc, I appreciate your time to share your story. I think we touched almost all the points. You opened up your beautiful home to us, and until we see you next time, we'll talk more about Powder. But I appreciate you, and thank you. Yeah.
I've been holding a cough for like 2 minutes. I thought I could talk through it, but